Well, we are live here with Coffee with Humans, where strangers become friends with my new friend Jacklyn. Jacklyn, welcome to Coffee with Humans.
Hello. Happy to
Now, here's
have you here.
welcome to Coffee with Humans. Now, here's something interesting. I did notice your last name, and I try to make I try to make no references or have any information about people before they sign before we get on this call, which I find fascinating, and I hope you do too.
Hmm.
But I recognize that last name, and
Yeah.
before the broadcast, you did give me a hint and said that I might somehow. How do I recognize that last name? Give me the deets.
I think it was 2 weeks ago. My mom was on the same thing. So when you asked where I was from, I told you that I was about 20 feet to the left of there.
Okay, that's that's right. Now, do I recall, was she going on a trip?
Hmm. Yeah, she just got back from Costa Rica a couple days ago, actually.
Oh, yes. That's what it was. Do you know how the trip was?
It was lovely. She loved it.
Okay. Do I recall also that she does things with scouts?
This one wasn't with Scouts, but yeah, a lot of trips she goes on are with Scouts.
Oh, interesting. And are you involved in that generally?
Hmm. Yeah, I'm an Eagle Scout and other things.
An Eagle Scout.
Hmm.
That's cool. I love it. I knew an Eagle Scout 20 more than 20 years ago. Super smart. Super smart kid.
Hmm.
So you must be then, for our viewers and listeners, I've just met Jacqueline here, and I don't know, or I didn't know where it was located other than um, I saw the area code, so I kind of believe that it might be around us, which is in Northern Illinois. True?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. Well, welcome to Coffee with Humans. Pretty exciting to have you here. I am curious, what inspired you to click the button to have coffee with me?
Well, so I watched my mom do it, and she had a great time. And I'm all about just hanging out with strangers. Those kind
Yeah.
of stranger presentations were never really for me, anyways. So I was like, why not have a 30-minute conversation with somebody I don't know?
Right? A stranger. Well, this is fun. So, again, it's great to have you here. When you first signed up, I asked a handful of questions in the sign up stuff, and people give all sorts of answers, give a range of answers. And you gave an answer. So I said, what are some topics that are recently on your mind? You talked about education, gender, use of the internet, fear, how it leads to hate. And then there's this question I like to ask, which is, if your life were a novel, what would one of the chapters be called? And you wrote Much Ado About Nothing, which are you in theater?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right, because I was thinking about the reference to Much Ado About Nothing, and I was like, I think only theater folks get that. So where's that come from?
Where does the title come from?
Yeah, this Much Ado About Nothing thing. Where's that sit with you?
So when I was like 15, uh, I I was in some really, really hard classes, and also at the same time my dad died. And then we had this a class during my history class. We talked about Taoism,
Okay.
and Taoism. It's part of it is kind of like letting what will happen happen, and
Hmm.
it's much more nuanced than I gave it credit for as a 15-year-old. And so I was like, oh, I get it. Nothing matters. And then I looked into nihilism, and I read a little bit about it, and basically I just read like the thesis of like a couple books, and I was like, I'm an expert now. Nothing matters. I'm not going to do anything about it. Uh, Realized about a year later that I was like, man, this sucks. And so I started caring about things again on purpose, though.
That's good. Yeah, I don't the path to caring about nothing. Where did that develop? Was that because your dad?
Partially my dad, partially I had like 40 to 50 missing assignments at the moment, or like late assignments. So I was
Yeah.
like, well, if I don't care, then they don't matter. They did. Uh,
True
they did
that.
quite a bit. I did them all though. I had like
Yeah.
80, and I did them all in one night. It was awful.
How did you go about getting the motivation back to go ahead and take care of those assignments? Because that's a big deal. You're not the only person who struggles with that,
Yeah.
and I mean adults that are probably have 30 years on you struggle with the same stuff.
And here's the thing is that I'm very much a sprinter when it comes to doing work. So
Okay.
maybe I didn't do any work all semester, but I did in one night do like it was I think 36 hours of video lectures sped up to quadruple speed that I had to take notes on.
I love it.
Uh, and I wrote 3 essays, and I read all of the Federalist Papers in that night, and of which there are like 80.
Do you
And
need the? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
and I got an A in the class.
Really?
I
Wow.
did.
So do you need the pressure of a timeline to be able to kind of kick you into gear?
I used to.
Okay.
Um, partially. So what I've done is I realized like, hey, if I'm gonna, you know, wait until the last minute to do something, maybe I should just change when the last minute is and set a goal to do it beforehand. And I felt so creative, and I was like, oh man, I just reinvented planning things. But
Well, they talk about that some high performers actually need deadlines to
Mhm.
focus thoughts because many people, and I actually think I might be one of them. I get so wrapped up in thoughts in my. Have you ever seen those? You seem like a pretty smart kid. So um, the the movie the videos where they take like it's not lead but maybe aluminum or something like that and they pour it down an anthill or
Yeah. Mhm.
right, and then they dig this thing up and there's all these chambers and such. That's what I feel like sometimes my mind is,
Mhm.
and I've got all these chambers and you just drop me in one little part and then brrr, I thought through all of
Mhm.
these things and sometimes I can get lost in that. And what I've heard, and I think this is pretty true in my own life, that sometimes the power of the deadline helps me cut through all the stuff that doesn't matter and focus all the thoughts down into the thing that does. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, all the time spent quote unquote procrastinating was really my mind subconsciously and even sometimes consciously exploring all of the pathways to figure out what it wanted to bring forward into kind of into that in the penultimate moment.
There's a
I thought I use a fancy word.
there's a concept, and I think it's called like Samuelson's law or something,
Okay.
that a project will take as long as you give yourself time to do it for. So if I'm,
Yes, that's true.
you know, yeah, I'll get that done by next week. I'll probably wait until the like next week to do it, or I'll like kind of like, oh, I guess I should probably work on that and type like 3 sentences of it, and then do that for a week. Whereas like, yeah, I'll have that done by tonight. I'm just gonna have
Yeah.
to write it all by tonight because that's when I told myself I would do it.
Yeah, the principle of work expands to fill the time allotted.
Hmm.
I was watching a not that's not true. I wasn't watching anything.
Hmm.
I ran over a gigantic beaver this morning on my bike ride. That's what I
Ooh.
was watching. Like a massive,
Uh-huh.
massive beaver on the bike path. I was just tooling around. I've got clipped in pedals and stuff, and I was tooling around, and this massive beaver came flying out, and I hit him, and then he like bumped me. I wasn't gonna run over him. He's like as big as a rock,
Hmm.
and I bumped him. I almost went into the river, which would have been interesting. And then he scurried around and ended up. And but the thing I was listening to when I hit this massive beaver was a book by Michael Hyatt called Free to Focus, where
Okay.
he talks about productivity and the myth of productivity, where the more productive we become, the more stuff we tend to do,
Hmm.
rather than productivity being this idea of let's consider all the things we shouldn't be doing so that we actually free our minds up to be creative, to be fully engaged in the
Hmm.
task at hand, rather than overwhelmed by the 40 assignments that we need to do,
Yeah.
all at the last minute.
Yeah. When I'm not on a deadline, I'm very much like a over the top kind of person where I'm like, yeah, I could just do these guided notes, but what if I improved upon them? Uh, and so that deadline definitely helps me cut down on, you know, I've got 40 assignments to do and 16 hours to do them. I ought to just do them.
Right? Exactly. Do you practice time blocking at all? You seem like a pretty forward thinker. And time blocking is this principle I actually just learned it several years ago, which feels I don't. It's not anything to be shameful about, but I feel like really I just learned that 4 years ago, or a couple years ago. The time blocking is where look at every task, figure out the amount of time it takes, and then just block it off on the calendar. So if it's going to take 3 hours, you just block it off on the calendar, um, and then you suddenly know within the scope of a week exactly where that time is going to be spent,
Mm,
and you can always do less. You can always take less time for sure. And then if something takes more time, you block off the extra time available as well. So you always have time for the tasks, and then you just simply move through them. But it seems like that's kind of like the next level on, when you're trying to break down
yeah,
all the assignments, all the stuff that has to be done.
I will probably do something like that when I'm in college. But this
Yeah.
last semester was the teachers were lowering the bar on how much homework there was, and I was spending more
Right.
time in each class. So I didn't really ever have to do homework this semester. Uh, but otherwise, I probably would have done something similar. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like to keep on top of the deadlines.
What was that like with the lowering of the bar of all of the work that needed to be done?
It was weird because, you know, I like you said, I'm like smartish, and so the teachers were lowering the bar because it's honestly a hard year, especially for the students that can't come into class in person. It's just hard to kind of glean that information from the internet, and so the homework was easier. There was less homework, but at the same time, there was kids who still weren't doing it, and I understand that like people aren't going to do stuff if you're making them work too hard, but also uh, I don't necessarily think that's always the problem is the class being too hard.
Hmm.
I think
Why do you say that?
there are occasionally just people who aren't interested. There was a couple students this year who never showed up to class, and the principal was saying like make the class easier for them. That's how you get them to show up, and they'll never know.
Yeah, I think the idea that making things easy suddenly somehow like encourages someone who doesn't want to do work to do work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how those two things somehow are related. I
Yeah.
think motivation and amount of stuff to get through are two different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a person can be kind of sort of motivated, like and have an average amount of motivation and plow through a ton of stuff. It just might take them more time versus a person who's highly motivated. They might plow through a ton of stuff in a short period of time. But you can't take a person who has no motivation, no desire. I mean, to your
Mm-hmm.
point of this nihilism thing, a person who's a nihilist, you can't motivate
Anymore.
them into caring. So why?
You
Well,
gotta give them
I'm
something to
not
work
sure
for.
what the disconnect is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of kids were like, well, I don't care. And so now they have to retake a class.
Yeah, it seemed like COVID was a good excuse
Yeah.
to slack off, and I get it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think globally, well, I shouldn't say globally. At least in Western society, it seems like there was a sort of a motivation to relax a bit
Mm-hmm.
around work and all the things that we filled our lives with to do that ultimately maybe some of it didn't matter or it mattered in sort of some sort of marginal way, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't super fulfilling to ourselves. And we felt like we were in a rat race. And so it was good to just be like, great, finally somebody tells me I have to stay home. Um, it's it's that thought about, there's no like summer breaks,
Yeah.
when you become an adult and start working. And it's pretty true,
Mm-hmm.
that we just continue on and on and on. And we're like, great, when do I get to stop this? And the answer is never.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of there was a survey done that said people who were working from home this year spent like 10% more time not paying attention or going to the bathroom or walking around, basically not doing work. But people working from home were actually over 20% more productive over this quarantine. So it's like we were like more relaxed, but when we sat down and got to it, we were actually faster. It's almost
I
like
believe it.
it's like an exhaustion thing, I think, where it's kind of before it's like, yeah, just keep chugging along slowly, and here it's kind of like, yeah, go at your own pace. When you've got I think Mark Twain said once, some days when you got it, and some days when you don't got it, you don't got it, and you just have to
Right.
do what you can on the days you got it.
Well, that goes back to that book that I was listening to today as I was riding my bike. The there was a I can't remember, I don't know if it was Germany or wherever. They actually cut the work hours to 6 hours a day instead of 8, and they
Mm-hmm.
found that employees accomplish just as much in 6 hours than 8. Only their health and life satisfaction went up
Mm-hmm.
because I think there is a tipping point even for people's energy where it's like I cannot do that whatever that thing is, I cannot do that any longer. It's like you staying in the house. Some people like to stay in the house
Mm-hmm.
indefinitely type of thing, but for most people, in my experience, after you spend just so much time in the house, you're like, I've got to get out of here. I've got to get outside. I've got to go do
Mm-hmm.
something. I've got to see people. And I feel like um that type of experience happens, when we go to a workplace. It's like, okay, I'm going to be here for the next, 8 hours or more in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
And to what benefit when I'm actually working, spending all this time here because I want to go do something over there in some cases.
Yeah.
And that's silliness,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's difficult when your main motivation is I have to do this so that I cannot do this anymore.
right? Yeah. So this nihilism thing, how's this get back to education and fear? Because you were also talking about you're talking about some heavy topics.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to go on a limb here and say you're a pretty young guy.
Yeah.
So okay, so uh, as a as a young person, education, fear, nihilism.
Yeah.
I mean, that's these are big things that some people don't deal with until later in life. How's this all circle around for you?
So circa when I was 15,
Yeah.
uh, after I had started all this nihilism stuff, I was like, you know what? It's really not all it's cracked up to be. Uh, and so I was like, let me go back to where I got the idea from. And I looked into Taoism and I was like, who knew it was more nuanced than I thought. Um, and a lot of Taoism is not necessarily nothing matters, but more so let what matters to you matter.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's more about when you feel called to do something, that would be an appropriate time to do something. Um, and it calls back to like that Mark Twain phrase that I mentioned. Uh, and so I took that and I was like, okay, so maybe doing schoolwork is good, as long as I feel motivated to do schoolwork, there's no harm in it. And so my school has this thing where they don't have deadlines. It's like this new, like, trendy initiative.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't love it.
Okay.
But it was sort of useful in the sense that, like, if I'm doing this when I feel called to, I can turn in something a couple days late if I'm, not feeling like doing work one day. I'm just like, okay, I'll wait and then do it tomorrow. When tomorrow comes, I'll get that done. And it worked out great this semester. Especially, we had like a hybrid thing going on. So I was in person one day and then out, like, at home the next day. And I would just plow through classwork as fast as I could on the days that I was here or at school. And then on the days that I was at home, I would just kind of log into class and I was like, well, I'm done with the work, and just kind of roll over.
So the no deadline thing, though, that's I'm curious about this education component. What was I listening to? Oh, I was either watching or listening to something maybe a week or two ago, and they talked about how like in school they say don't work, do your own work, don't ask for help, or like, don't copy off each other and all this other stuff.
Mhm.
And then when you get to and that's like and if you do, you're a cheater. But when you get to the workplace, then if you did that, then we'd say you're collaborative.
Right.
And it's interesting that there is this disconnect, it seems, between how the education system operates and how, quote unquote, the real world operates.
Mhm.
No deadlines. That's not a thing. Like
Right. This is
past
why I don't
school,
like
it's like you have to have a deadline.
Because now I gotta go to college, and they're gonna be like, "Yeah, I can just turn this in by Wednesday," and I'll be like, "Yeah, but Wednesday is more of like a suggestion, right?" And they'll be like, "No, turn it in by Wednesday."
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I've got some college courses right now that they the class opens up on Wednesday. You have to turn all of your stuff in by Tuesday. If you don't, you get a zero for that week.
Mhm.
Nothing. And no exceptions. And they even say if you have internet problems, that's your own fault. You need to figure out how to have good internet, which is like, well, duh. I mean, that's exactly what people need to do in the workplace. It's like, I don't know. Years ago. I was 20, maybe 19. I don't know. I was a supervisor at Best Buy, and a guy, one of my employees, came up to me and he says, I need a raise. And I was like, why do you need a raise? And he said, well, I got to get snow tires for my car. And I was like, your car is not my issue. Nobody, I didn't, they're not my snow tires. They're not the company's snow tires. Is there something you're doing better at your job? Like, give me something concrete from a work perspective, not just because you need snow tires.
Right. Yeah, and I'm trying to think of a parallel because I know there is one with education where I've had a couple teachers who brought a lot of like their personal life into the classroom and let it kind of, well, actually it was just the one teacher
Okay.
who he was going through some stuff and he would talk about it during class, and we weren't able to learn anything because the whole time he would be talking about this instead of how to diagram a sentence. So it was a little bit of
rough. It's got to be rough. I had a teacher. I was recounting a story the other day to someone about a teacher from who is grade school, and I was terrified. I may or may not have had a shoe thrown at me once, and I don't think it was directed towards me, but I was terrified of this individual. And and she was going through some rough times in her life, but I didn't know as a fifth grader or sixth grader or whatever.
Right.
No, I had no idea. Like all the like,
Plus,
she was
hated you.
barely human. She was a teacher to me at that age, just
Mhm.
like this mystical, this mythic creature of teacher,
Mhm.
and I couldn't even process that, teachers had lives. It was that age where it's like you walk through like the grocery store or something like that, and your teacher's there, and you're like,
I
what
thought
is
you lived
she
at
doing?
school.
What is she doing here?
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, everybody's got lives, and it plays and it works its way out. It works its way out into all circumstances, just like the mythic idea that nothing matters is absolutely not true. Nobody actually
Mhm.
believes that. And yet there's the things. Well, some things matter more than others, and a lot of things that we think matter don't matter. There's the saying of if it's not going to matter 5 years from now, don't give it 5 minutes today.
Mhm. Yeah, and I like that, but I feel like there's like you can personally assign however much importance you want to most things.
Okay.
And so maybe there's something that won't matter 5 years from now, but if it gives you like 10 minutes of joy to do this, it won't matter in 5 years that I had in Arizona today, but I do certainly like having an Arizona tea once in a while. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily matter, but I can put some isthmus on it if I want to. Uh, you know, I'm gonna take some extra time out of my day and drink an Arizona tea.
Yeah, to be present with your current reality, to
Hmm.
make a better life, to make a balanced life, to make life what you want it to be, because we all have that power and authority to make life what we want it to be.
There's a Japanese art style called enso,
Okay.
and it's about being present, and it's when you do it, it's the goal is to put all of your focus and all of your thought into just this one painting, and it's actually you just paint a circle, but like as quickly and as smoothly as you can. They look really cool. You should look it up sometime. It's Enzo.
So you paint a circle as quickly as you can.
And so you like focus in for like 10 minutes, and you pull up your paintbrush and you just whoop.
And what is the all right, Enso Zen. And what is the principle behind that?
The idea is that your full focus is in the present. So you're not, when you're doing it, you're
Hmm.
not thinking about whatever happened last week. You're not thinking about what's going to happen, 2 weeks from now. Your only goal in life at that very moment is to paint a circle.
Hmm.
And whatever thoughts come to you in that moment will kind of like, come to you and pass through your brain and then go. But it's like a meditation almost.
Yeah.
Um,
I have a lot of respect for the the older cultures, like a lot of Asian cultures that have been around for thousands of years,
mhm.
because there's a simplicity, I think, there's a holistic, if I can say it this way, there's like a holistic simplicity
Yeah.
to certain areas of thought and the mind and the body and the spirit that it sort of gets mucked up when we overlay things like achievement or productivity or something like that that we
Mhm.
tend to put into Western cultures.
Yeah, and I agree with that. There's a lot of old practices that I really enjoy because I try them out once in a while. I think that if we were less wrapped up in you know getting things done and more wrapped up in doing things that we liked, I feel like we would get more stuff done.
How has this how have these thoughts impacted your what you see your future as? Because I my my perception is that you've had some circumstances, that you didn't ask for that were difficult to make it through.
Hmm.
That led you into sort of a dark night of the soul thing, which everybody gets the privilege of going through. Um, and and then you've sort of turned the corner on that. Some new thoughts have sunk in that have reshifted. I'm getting this perception that somehow reshifted the kind of the paradigm in which you want to live your life in the present and the future. What is that paradigm, and how does that play out from a practical standpoint?
So it was very much, back when I was like 12, 13, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to become an engineer because A, I'm smart enough to be an engineer, and B, they make a lot of money. So those are the only two things I need to do for a job. And then, as I got a little bit older, kind of, went through my little journey, I realized that, like, I don't think I want to be an engineer, actually. It would probably be cool. There'd be things about it I would like, but that's not what I want to do. And I decided that I really liked music. And so I was like, it'd be a great idea teaching music to other people and giving them that gift to share. And so I've always made this joke with my choir teacher, and I was like, I could have been a rich engineer, and you taught me about my passions in life.
Wow.
I could be a starving artist, but
yeah, maybe.
I'm going into education, so I'm not too worried about it. But
it's interesting that the path that you were on, it sounds like, which was just kind of like this just seems like a good, life path, took a kind of a hard left. And in traumatic events had a recentering effect on what you actually wanted to do and what kind of made you come alive, which in your case is music.
Yeah. I think it's definitely, one of those things where you can, diverge from the path as much as you want, but like when you see something that you want to do like that, you just have to kind of know that, like, okay, I'm going to make mistakes and get, distracted from this once in a while, but this is where I'm going to refocus. And it doesn't matter, if I do make mistakes, I'll just have to work my way through that and get to this end goal.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you've recentered yourself on a new focus, which has now impacted what you want to do from a education standpoint and from a career standpoint. How has this impacted? You've moved from the nothing matters model to the know what matters model, which it's a kind of a razor thin edge between saying no to everything and saying no to the things that don't matter. It seems you're probably working that through too on what really matters to you.
Yeah, and it's been unique because I've always been able to kind of have very unique or like specific control over my emotions, but I feel like there's a balance to be struck between, I don't care about this anymore, I'm not going to care about it, and being like, you know what, this was important, so I'm going to, feel how I want about this for a little bit, and then I'll deal with it later. I've heard that, like, crying does nothing, and I don't cry, but like, being sad for a little bit doesn't hurt anything. If you've got something sad going on in your life, you can just be sad for a little bit, and then, you want to give yourself a span of time that's appropriate, but if you're able to just not be sad anymore, you should probably give yourself some of that time to work through it, though. You know what I mean?
Well, there's this idea that no emotion goes undealt with. You can pack it down, but it's just going to come back with a vengeance. And I know that to be true for sure. And I mean, nobody likes sad emotions. I don't think. Um, I don't. But yet, some of the greatest power comes from that. You know, some of the greatest energy is in sadness,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact, you know, a number of good musical works and
Yeah.
have been birthed out of people's sadness,
Mm-hmm.
not their joy.
Yeah, and it's no emotion goes undealt with, and it's definitely like, if you're able to just stop being sad, that's probably not super healthy to just I'm not going to be sad about this, and more just like, okay, I'm going to be sad about this, and kind of try to be sad about this for this X amount of time, and I'll try to get through all of this sadness at once. It's like a speed run almost.
Yeah, I found that I've found that there has to be a level of patience involved,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
The the patience to allow the unfolding um, eh, of whether it's kind of like the caterpillar turns into the butterfly, you know, it kind of has to go away for a while to
Hmm.
completely change form, or whether it's the unfolding of a flower, you know, where it's like it began as just kind of just this ball at the end of a stem, and then it gradually unfolds, and there are different layers that come out until it reaches its full beauty. There is also an unfolding of what matters to me, the unfolding of how do I feel about this, the unfolding
Hmm.
of what is the depth that I need to explore this matter, and the process allow the process really to have its way in some cases, because so many of these things are not a matter of thinking, they're a matter
Right.
of feeling, and and feelings are like sand in the ocean. You know, they're just like moving from here to here, and all of a sudden they showed up. This sandbar showed up here, and the next
Hmm.
day it like showed up over there. You know, like where where's this going? And yet, it all works together to create a beach that everybody wants to play at.
And you said that emotion often plays a bigger role than thought, and I agree with that. There's a lot of people, I think, and probably me as well, who subconsciously is like, here's what I feel, here's some sort of opinion I'm going to have about what I feel, and now I'm going to figure out how to back it up with information. Whereas it's probably better for all of us to back up our opinions with thoughts, and then our actions with emotion. You know what I mean?
Well, the idea I've heard talked about like this, that like emotions are like the thermometer, uh, and our function, our brain, our thought processes are more like the thermostat. And so emotions are information that we can take in, after which they need to be processed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so it would be weird to just allow the house to be whatever temperature you want it to be without
Exactly.
feeling. Um, nobody really wants that.
Mm-hmm.
To generate a level of consistency, there has to be a system in place, a way of thinking, a way of regulating, that then when the temperature changes, we're like, oh, wait a second, what actually needs to be done is, and then take action on it, rather than just being tossed and turned by emotions. And yet it's a fine line, because we are emotional beings, and we're designed to be emotional beings. We're designed to connect with each other through some, a significant level of emotion,
Mm-hmm.
and yet not be governed by it. And
Yeah.
that
It's
is a lifelong process to learn.
it's about balance, truly.
Yeah.
And that's another part of Taoism that I totally skipped over when I was talking about it. Is a lot of it is about um, finding unique balances in things, and uh, just holistically, you know this thing matters to me, this thing doesn't. You know, doing everything in enough moderation that it all you know you don't get tired of anything, and you don't get, bored of anything. So yeah, I think overall it all comes down to how much you can balance things out and keep your life, in moderation, I guess.
Yeah. I really love the thought that you give to all of these things. I think it's remarkable, and most likely a result of needing to think about these things. And I can see your future as a in sort of a transformed way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you have a depth of thought that is beyond your years, which will inform and impact the your future endeavors, which and whatever those are. I mean, and what a great opportunity too, especially if you're going to go into education,
Yeah.
that and have such a significant impact on other people. Of all the people who should be giving something a bit of thought, it would be the people who are directly impacting the future generation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's good to focus up on how, because the axe forgets and the tree remembers, right? You can do something and, you'll never remember whatever, random thing you said to a student, but they'll remember that forever.
That's a great saying.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess that'll be helpful.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're butting up the end of our time here today. This has been great. I'm so thankful that you joined me for coffee this morning. I noticed you weren't drinking coffee, and I extend forgiveness to you. I was drinking some pretty strong coffee and really loving it. So thanks for indulging me in this moment.
Of course.
But what a great time. I really appreciate you coming on Coffee with Humans and sharing your story and having a chat with me. And yeah, certainly the way you're thinking about life is, I've met many people who give life a whole lot less thought than that. And that's so to your credit, great job.
Thank you.
However that has had to come about in your life, it's pretty remarkable. So, well, any last words you want to leave people with? I'll give you the final outro here.
Oh,
I know I put you on the spot. Don't do drugs. Yeah, that's the one. That's
the one.
That's the one. Okay, sounds good. Well. To all our viewers and listeners, this is Coffee with Humans, a live, candid talk show streamed internationally and also broadcast on Google, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and others, where strangers become friends. I just met Jacklyn about an hour ago, and we've got to know each other through this call, and you've all been invited to that. So thanks so much for joining us on the journey, and we'll catch you next time.
One of the things I love about Coffee with Humans are the raw conversations I get to have, meeting new people just like you. If you or someone you know should be on Coffee with Humans, go to coffeewithhumans.com. Remember, the only rule is no sales calls.
This has been Coffee with Humans. Subscribe to get updates or click to have coffee with me. coffeewithhumans.com.